घंटे उनकी टेंडिंग में और केयर में लगा रहता है. वेरी वेरी लकी फादर, आई मस्ट से. और इसको देख के तो श्रवण कुमार का ही चरितार्थ होता है.
So we are live now. Yeah, Dr. Devnath, we are live now.
Okay, sir. We can start now, sir.
Okay, should I start?
Please, sir.
So on my behalf and on behalf of Association of Otolaryngologists of India Kanpur chapter, I welcome you all to this live webinar on cancer. I have 4 people from Max Cancer Institute and Hospital in Delhi, led by Dr. Anand, Dr. Harit Chaturvedi, Dr. Devrat Arya, and Rohit Nair. Since Dr. Chaturvedi is not here at the moment, I would introduce Dr. Anand to all of you. He is working as a Senior Director, Radiation at the Max Cancer Center and Max Hospital. He has been in this hospital for almost 11 years now. He is a graduate of Ludhiana, Dayanand Medical College, and a postgraduate from PGI Chandigarh. He has various publications in international journals. The significant amongst them is the British Journal of Radiology and the Head and Neck Journal in UK. Significantly, topic was perineural invasion in advanced bucco-alveolar complex carcinomas, which have been treated with surgery and chemoradiation. That is a big feather in his cap. I have Dr. Rohit Nair with me, who is the Director and Clinical Administrator of Surgical Oncology. He has more than 18 years experience in treating cancer in India. As I have just learned, he had trained in Sloan Kettering with Dr. Jatin Shah for head and neck cancers for a sizable period of time, and is now the consultant surgical oncologist at Max Hospital. He earlier was working with the Asian Institute of Medical Sciences, Faridabad. He has looked after Artemis Hospital. He has worked with Indraprasth Apollo Hospital and has been the lecturer of Gujarat Cancer Research Institute at Ahmedabad. He was mainly trained and educated at Ahmedabad, and he carries the true spirit of Gujarat in tending to his patients. He has a special interest in head and neck cancers, breast, thorax, and GI tract malignancies. I have another young person with me, is Dr. Devrat Arya, who is the senior consultant in medical oncology at Max Super Specialty Hospital, Saket, and the Max Institute of Cancer Care, Lajpat Nagar. Most of his training has been in Gujarat. He has done his DM in medical oncology from Gujarat Cancer and Research Institute, Ahmedabad. He is the holder of European Certificate of Medical Oncology, which is a rare certificate, and has many publications in national and international journals. His areas of main interest are head and neck and breast cancers. I don't have Dr. Harit Chaturvedi at the moment. So I think we will wait for him to join in, and then I say a few words for him. Is that all right, Devrat?
Right, sir. Right.
Do we start our discussions and your panel discussions?
Yes, sir. So let's start with the case-based discussion.
Okay, so now you take over.
Right, sir. So we have 3 case-based discussions, and I'll go first, followed by Dr. Rohit, and followed by Dr. Anand, sir. And Very quickly, these are all case-based discussions. So thank you, Dr. Subhash Garg. Thank you, Dr. Asif, for this opportunity given to us to present our experience, share our experience, and learn together about this disease, this cancer, which is the #1 cancer in India. Thank you, ENT AOI, and wishing Dr. Asif's father the very best, and wishing him a speedy recovery as well. So my topic is recurrent head and neck cancers, how chemotherapy and immunotherapy are bringing a new hope. So I think the backbone of treatment for head and neck cancers is provided by the surgical oncologist and the radiation oncologist. And I think chemotherapy has contributed somewhat by adding to the survival, especially in locally advanced head and neck cancers. But it is the recurrent and metastatic head and neck cancers which have been really challenging for all of us. These are usually associated with dismal outcomes. So presenting this first case, so this lady actually was a very old case and diagnosed in 2012, a smoker. She was a joint passport holder of India and the UK, and she was diagnosed with a CA, the supraglottic larynx. Initially, it was a squamous cell carcinoma, moderately differentiated. She was treated with a combination of radiation therapy and chemotherapy and had a very good response to it. But unfortunately, 2 years later, it was a routine follow-up PET scan which revealed that she had a squamous cell carcinoma. She had multiple lung nodules, and the biopsy confirmed it to be a squamous cell carcinoma. And at that time, her performance status was still good. And in fact, the PET scan not only revealed the multiple lung tumors, there was also disease. There was a local recurrence of the disease, and we were surprised that there were very few symptoms because of that. And then the case was discussed in tumor board, and then we realized that probably what we wanted to her was palliative chemotherapy. Now we all know that traditionally for chemotherapy, we've either used a single agent or more often a platinum-based doublet, but outcomes have been poor. Most of these patients survive only about 7-8 months, and the response rates are again dismal at 25 to 35%. And what we also worried about is the kind of toxicity that chemotherapy regimen may end up giving the patient. And in a lot of settings, a lot of these patients are actually not treated at all and put on best supportive care. But I think that has changed. In 2010, we had the first line study for a drug called cetuximab, which is an anti-EGFR monoclonal antibody. And this study looked at a combination of cetuximab along with a platinum 5-FU, which is the standard chemotherapy doublet. And what we saw was that after decades and decades of poor outcomes and research, this study revealed that the combination actually improved the survival by as much as 2.5 months. So the average survival for the standard chemotherapy arm was around 7 months, whereas when you combined it with cetuximab, the overall survival actually improved to 10 months. So incremental gain, 2.5 months may not look that good, but certainly it's nearly 25% improvement or 30% improvement in survival. So looking at that data, that is what we offered to this lady. She was given carboplatin 5 cetuximab. There were some toxicities. They appeared manageable. And after 3 lines of therapy, this is what the PET scan showed. So you can clearly see on the scan that the locally recurrent tumor had not only reduced in size, but had also reduced in the uptake, and so had the multiple lung nodules. In fact, the patient was on chemotherapy and subsequently on cetuximab maintenance for nearly a year. And this experience reflected what the research had shown, that this new targeted therapy, cetuximab, was actually adding to the survival of chemotherapy, even in a real world setting. In fact, we at Max then published our experiences with this drug in the first line setting. So this is a publication in one of the reputed journals, the Head and Neck, and a significant number of patients deriving benefit. Our own experience showing that response rates were to the tune of 70 to 80%, and our patients were living as long as what was seen in the clinical research setting. So this is the early part of this decade. What has happened since? And I think there have been some more advances, and this is another case. This is the second case. In fact, a very recently diagnosed case. So came to us in March 2020. So old gentleman, 73 old, retired army officer, chronic smoker, and presented to us right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic with a difficulty in swallowing of 5 months duration, but also cough of 3 months duration. On examination, borderline PS, palpable left BOT lesion, hard-fixed cervical nodes. While there was nothing on the systemic examination, we did a biopsy which was suggestive of moderately differentiated carcinoma. And we thought that this patient was probably going to go on to radiation therapy with or without chemotherapy. But unfortunately, the PET scan, as you can see on your screens, actually revealed multiple lung lesions. So we assessed his symptomatology. So while there was some pain in swallowing, it didn't appear terribly bad. And we thought we'd probably start with systemic therapy before offering palliative radiation therapy to him first. Now, we know that a standard combination of platinum 5FU for patients who are more than 70 years is going to be very challenging. And we looked at different treatment options. And we also referred to this research which had been reported last year, which actually looked at combining immunotherapy along with chemotherapy instead of the anti-EGFR drug. And what this research suggested that compared to cetuximab with chemotherapy, immunotherapy with chemotherapy actually led to further improvement in survival. So from chemotherapy, which led to an average survival of 7.5 months, we're looking at 10 months with cetuximab with chemotherapy. And for PDL1 positive patient, PDL1 being a biomarker, we actually realized that patients could now live for as long as 15 months in certain subsets of patients with recurrent or metastatic head and neck cancer. So this is what we did to this patient. We modified the chemotherapy backbone. We thought he would not be able to tolerate the carboplatin 5FU. So we gave him paclitaxel carboplatin and combined it with pembrolizumab. There were obviously fears about the chemotherapy toxicity, especially in the COVID times. But thankfully, he tolerated the regimen very well. He had a little bit of nausea, some allergic reaction initially to paclitaxel, and we changed it to nab-paclitaxel. And by July 2020, he had completed 12 weeks of therapy and look at the response. So the primary lesion in the base of tongue has nearly disappeared. And there's a significant reduction even in the lung lesion. This is the largest lesion. So significant reduction in size and the uptake on the PET scan. The patient was clinically much better. We gave him about 16 weeks of chemotherapy and then we stopped the chemotherapy, and the patient continues to be on pembrolizumab, which is the immunotherapeutic drug. And I think this is a prime example of an elderly stage 4 breast cancer receiving a reasonably well-tolerated regimen combination of chemotherapy and immunotherapy. In fact, during COVID times and responding very well to it. Final case, the third case, this lady was a 58-year-old female who initially, and resident of Aligarh in fact, and initially presented with difficulty in swallowing and pain in right cheek, and went to the ENT specialist, and then thereafter came to us, and she had an MRI of the face and neck which had revealed a large enhancing growth on the right side of tongue, with fairly large at 5 by 4 by 3 centimeter, multiple cervical nodes, biopsy revealing well-differentiated squamous cell carcinoma, significant comorbidity with coronary artery disease, with 2 episodes of angioplasty, and not willing for surgery. And then we did a PEG feeding tube, and then we decided to offer her the chemo radiation with cisplatin and a full dose of radiation therapy, which we had finished by June of 2018. Now, she came to us 2 months later, and there was a significant increase in pain. And traditionally, most of these patients who have been treated with chemoradiation would not be evaluated until we've had 3 months post the radiation, because even after the radiation is over, the radiation continues to work and we see significant tumor shrinkage. But she came to us with significant increase in symptoms. The lesion had increased in size. It was now invading the surrounding structures as well. And a subsequent PET CT also confirmed the same. And we did a biopsy, and the biopsy confirmed that there was disease which was actually progressive. So this is not a very common setting. Most of the patients, there would be nearly 70% to 80% responses in locally advanced head and neck cancer to a combination of chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Unfortunately, she had progressive disease, and the PET also revealed multiple subcentimetric nodules. So now this is a platinum refractory patient, and most of these patients do poorly. Response rates are rare, less than 5%. Most of these patients would survive no more than 4 to 6 months. And even targeted therapies have not been that successful. The standard of care was methotrexate until 2 years back or 3 years back. There was no drug which had shown survival advantage. And this is when, again, the immunotherapy concept came in. And one of the first studies for immunotherapy was CheckMate 141. which actually looked at in a second line setting comparison of immunotherapy drug nivolumab versus the standard treatment as per physician choice, which could have been a taxane or cetuximab or methotrexate. And while you can see, while even in this setting, the outcomes are still dismal. Nearly 30%, 35% patients were actually able to survive for 1 year. And you can clearly see that tail of the curve. So for a longer follow-up, there was nearly 10-15% patients who were actually able to survive for 2 years or more. And I think this is the magic with immunotherapy drugs. These patients can survive fairly long period of time on immunotherapy. So this is what we did for our patient. We started her on immunotherapy nivolumab. This is a 2-weekly regimen, and you can see the scan results on your screen. So significant reduction in the size of the lesion, and more so in the uptake of lesion, and most importantly, significant reduction in the pain of the lesion. And you'd be surprised to know, in fact, it was today that she was admitted for the 40th dose of injection nivolumab, and she has survived nearly 2 years, has significant clinical benefit. The PEG tube has been removed, and probably she is not the rule. She's probably an exception, but she is one of those 10 to 20% of these patients who would have an excellent and a long-lasting response to immunotherapy, whereas most of the other patients may not do so well. So I'll conclude my presentation by saying that targeted therapy and immunotherapy have brought about significant improvements in patients who suffer from recurrent and metastatic head and neck cancers, where local therapies may not be feasible, where a resurgery or re-irradiation may not be feasible. Usage in real-world settings, even in India, seems to show that there are encouraging results, while we would obviously want to have even better results for most of our patients. But clearly what this data seems to suggest, that putting patients with recurrent and metastatic head and neck cancer on best supportive care without evaluating their fitness for one of these options should be an exception rather than a rule. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, before we proceed with the rest of the things, I would like to welcome Dr. Harit Chaturvedi, who has joined in a little late, but I think he's there. Are you there, Harit?
बिल्कुल सर, बिल्कुल
बिल्कुल. So
मेरा दिल तो से ही कानपुर के साथ था, मैं कुछ फंस गया था बीच में.
So before I would like to welcome Dr. Harit Chaturvedi on my behalf and on behalf of the Association of Otolaryngologists of India, Kanpur chapter. Especially, Dr. Harit Chaturvedi is a son of Kanpur, and we are very proud of him. He has been the graduate and postgraduate from GSVM Medical College, which is my alma mater and the alma mater of most of us who are attending this. Presently, he is risen to the post of chairman, Max Institute of Cancer Care. He is the founder of the largest and finest oncology program in the country, which is known as the Disease Management Group. Am I right?
Yes. Sir, वो एक मॉडल है, या बिल्कुल वो एक मॉडल है जो हम लोग को पुश करता है.
Having a team of more than 100 oncologists to help position Max as the Max Institute of Cancer Care as one of the most respected brands in the oncology space. Hats off to you.
Thank you, sir.
He is the president-elect of Indian Association of Surgical Oncology. His ability as a mentor and teacher is applauded by many cancer surgeons in India and abroad. इस सब के बावजूद he has been operating in many national and international workshops for cancer surgery and teaching the younger surgeons a lot of gur, जिसको कहते हैं, the pearls of wisdom in cancer surgery. इसके अलावा I have one more qualification which he has earned to add, which is not given in his biodata, but from today it will be added to his biodata. Dr. Harit has been helping so many people from Kanpur. इनकी मदरलैंड कहते हैं, तो कानपुर से कोई भी जाता है तो उसको ये ऐसे हाथों हाथ लेते हैं कि लोग लौट के जब आते हैं तो कहते हैं, अरे वाह भैया, डॉक्टर हरित ने यार कितना हमारा हेल्प किया. And at present time, especially COVID patients. I think so many patients from Kanpur and Lucknow are going to Max Hospital, and at least 80% are being facilitated by Dr. Hari Chaturvedi. Again, आपको बहुत बहुत प्रणाम.
सर, आपने इतना बोल दिया, मैं पता नहीं क्या डिजर्व करता हूँ, क्या नहीं डिजर्व करता हूँ, बट आई एम ओवरवेल्म्ड बाय योर वर्ड्स. और
मेरे ख्याल से तो शायद आप इससे ज्यादा डिजर्व करते हो. मैंने तो छोटा कर दिया आप.
अरे सर, मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूँ कि मैं जो कुछ भी बना हूँ वो कानपुर की वजह से हूँ. मैं वैसे तो लखनऊ में स्कूलिंग थी, बट जो मैंने कानपुर में पाया वही सब कुछ है मेरे लिए, वही सब कुछ था. सो काइंड ऑफ यू. कोविड ने सही में सबको पैरालाइज किया. तो मेरे अस्पताल वाले कहते हैं मेरा पर डे एडमिशन रेट 2 पर डे का एडमिशन रेट है अस्पताल में और कोविड पेशेंट.
उसमें से 50
को हुआ जी, वो कानपुर लखनऊ वहीं से पूरा सब कुछ
कानपुर लखनऊ से. तो सब लोग बहुत आपको याद यहाँ पे करते हैं और बहुत आशीर्वाद देते हैं. गॉड ब्लेस यू.
जी जी सर, थैंक यू सर.
Do we now carry on, Devrat, with the rest of our deliberations?
I think Devrat, we can continue with this. ये जो DMG वर्ड आपने बोला सर, वो मैं मॉडल के बारे में बस एक लाइन बोलना चाहता हूँ कि हमने डिजीज मैनेजमेंट ग्रुप पे बहुत ज्यादा फोकस किया है, जिससे कि स्पेशलाइज्ड वर्क करने के लिए हेड नेक टीम, ब्रेस्ट टीम, GI टीम, thoracic टीम works independently, and this is the model which we have created, where it is possible now that we have, for example, in South Zone, we have about 30 oncologists working together. So all this is possible because people have opportunities to perform, and this also ensures कि लोग जो हैं patient get best care, the doctors are able to focus on limited areas and do the good work. So we are very humble. We have a fantastic team, as you said, and you will find that we have got Dr. Devrat, for example, here, Dr. Anand, is our senior also, Dr. Rohit Nair. So they are here right now. But if you look at this model on the left side, we have got so many medical oncologists, surgical oncologists, radiation oncologists, and this is the, on the right side, you have a specialized teamwork based on the organ, so that who is doing what. And we keep pushing that. Our tumor board model, next slide, please. हम लोग ensure करते हैं that everybody goes through a tumor board. This is our head neck team. Next, please. So ये हम लोग का सर tumor board चलता है. Every patient who comes, as Dr. Devrat pointed out few cases, and you will see in further cases that these cases generally get discussed in our tumor board. We don't stop treatment, but we ensure that the data gets incorporated and people know what is happening, and that ensures that more objective decision making, more professional approach to decision making rather than whimsical, or at times you get carried away as a clinician also what decision to take. So with this, I want to hand over to, I think, the next case presentation by Dr. Anand or
Sir, Dr. Rohit. Dr. Rohit.
Dr. Rohit, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Harit. Thank you, Dr. Subhash and Dr. Asif, and all members of Otolaryngology Association Kanpur chapter, and all my friends in Kanpur. This is Dr. Rohit Nair. We have a team with Dr. Vikram Sharma as my senior resident, and Dr. Hari Chaturvedi is always there as in the department of advanced surgery. Today we are discussing about some cases where once a patient has been treated with surgery or chemoradiotherapy and he gets a recurrence.
Dr. Rohit, I'm sorry. There is a little bit of disturbance in the background. Yeah, it's gone now.
Is it okay?
A little better, sir. A little better.
Yeah, so we are discussing some cases now today. Once the patient has completed surgery or chemoradiotherapy, and if the disease comes back, what options do these patients have? Majority of these patients go in for palliative care. But is there any role of surgeries in these patients? Can we improve life of these patients? Can we treat them? Can we cure them? So this is a big question which arises once a patient fails. Majorly centers, normally these patients go for palliative care, but you really have to choose your patients and select who's going to benefit from a surgery in these patients. Next slide, please. So we are presenting a case of a young lady, 60-year-old school teacher, who presented to us with complaint of hoarseness of voice and progressive dysphagia. She had for the solids first and then later on for the liquids as well in the year 2017. Next slide, please. On investigation, it was found that she had a growth in the upper esophagus post-cricoid area with near total obstruction, and the biopsy dilatation were done by the physician two times, but it failed. They did a biopsy from the stricturous lesion and it turned out to be moderately differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. And whole body CT PET scan was done, which showed that the disease is confined to upper thoracic esophagus from C7 to D2 levels, with no metastasis anywhere else in body. So she had a small stricturous lesion in the upper esophagus or post-cricoid area. Next, please.
Dr. Rohit, there's still some background noise. Please try and remove your earplug. Maybe that will help.
Am I audible now?
I think
Yeah.
if you eject your earphone and speak, then I think.
Am I audible?
The moment you start your audio, the disturbance starts.
Already start the audio. So on the PET scan now, you can see she's got a lesion in the upper esophagus. Next slide, please. So what treatment do we do? So for upper esophagus and post-cricoid area, our first line of treatment normally is chemotherapy and radiotherapy. That's what we normally plan. Next slide, please. So she was subjected to radiotherapy by IMRT technique, 60 gray in 33 fractions, along with chemotherapy, that is paclitaxel and carboplatin was given. And it started from January till March. And then after chemoradiation, she was put on follow-up. Next, please. So patient had difficulty in swallowing after 6 months of treatment, for which esophageal dilatation was done. In November 2018, esophageal dilatation again was done, and by that time they did a biopsy from it, which showed that she had a poorly differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. So within 6 to 8 months of treatment, she got a recurrence in the esophagus. Next slide, please. Again, the PET CT was done, which showed a localized disease, and there was no metastasis anywhere else in the body. So patient has recovered within 8 months of completion of CTRT. So what should we do now? Next, please. Next, please. So again, as Dr. Devrat said, we have a tumor board in our institute where each and every case is discussed. So once a patient has failed, again it was discussed in tumor board, what should be the best option for patient. And the decision to do a salvage surgery was taken since she had only a localized disease. So she underwent salvage surgery, but during surgery, it was found that the disease was inoperable because tumor was infiltrating into the artery, particularly carotid artery, and also into the trachea. So surgery was deferred and feeding jejunostomy was done. Next, please. Patient was planned for palliative chemotherapy since she had a locally inoperable disease. So she was given paclitaxel, carboplatin, and cetuximab. Cetuximab is a monoclonal antibody, as Dr. Devrat has mentioned. So at that time, this was the drug which was offered to patients who have failed chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So she received weekly chemotherapy with paclitaxel, carboplatin, and cetuximab from December 2018 till May 2019. Next, please. So again in May 2019, we did a PET scan for her to assess the response. And to our surprise, that she responded so well to chemotherapy that there was only mild FDG uptake in the esophagus from C7 to D2 levels. Again, no metastasis. Now this patient had dysphagia. She had a complete dysphagia. She couldn't even swallow her saliva also. She has to keep spitting out her saliva because it was total obstruction of esophagus. She was only on feeding jejunostomy with liquid diet. So much so that she lost her weight and she had become only 37 kg. So that was her misery and that was her state when she came to us. So again, we took a decision, we discussed this case in tumor board, and a decision to do a salvage surgery was taken because if we can do a surgery, we can palliate her dysphagia and if possible even cure her, treat her for her disease as well. Next, please. So she was taken up for surgery. Next, please. A laryngopharyngoesophagectomy transhiatal with gastric pull-up was done in June 2019. Patient had a good recovery post-op and she was discharged on 6th post-operative day without any post-operative complications. To our surprise, when we sent the tumor for biopsy, it showed that there was no viable residual disease in the esophagus. So she had such a good response to monoclonal antibody and chemotherapy that there was no viable disease in the esophagus. But at one place, she had a microscopic disease in the cut end of the trachea. So when we had cut the trachea, because this was infiltrating into trachea, since we had taken normal margins, we had sent margins for frozen section, which was all clear, but on final histopathology, we found that there was some microscopic disease at the cut margin of trachea. Next, please. So what should we do? So we discussed again with our radiation oncologist, Dr. Anand, who decided to give him local radiotherapy at the tracheostoma site because the tracheal margin, cut margin was positive. So she was radiated with IGRT technique to a dose of 45 gray from August to September 2019. She tolerated treatment well and went back to her place. Next, please. In July 2020, we called her for follow-up. She had come up and we did a PET CT scan and it was absolutely normal. There was no evidence of disease anywhere in her body. Next, please. So it's been 1 year now since we operated. We operated her in September 2019 and this is September 2020. She is disease free right now. She is having a normal diet. She's eating her chapatis and she's eating all her normal food, which she was craving up till now because she would barely could even take water from mouth. She's eating everything. She has started going to her school. She's using an electrolarynx nowadays to speak and she has gained 8 kgs of weight as well. Next, please. So this is one of the success stories of the recurrent tumors which we have projected. In last 1 year, we have done about 28 such cases of salvage surgeries for head and neck cancer tumors, be of oral cavity cancers, for laryngeal cancers, for eye tumors, for maxillary tumors, you name it, and we have done it. And you really need to select these patients. One thing I just want to be clearing with everyone that you need to select your patients. You can't offer salvage surgery for all patients. The purpose of doing salvage surgery is to give them good quality of life. If first thing is to cure the disease, if cannot cure it, at least give them good quality of life. So whatever life they have, they should have a good quality of life. Next, please. There are some of the examples which just I want to show. This small girl who had an eye tumor which was operated twice before, and then finally he got such a massive recurrent tumor which they couldn't diagnose anywhere else. She came to us, we did a complete excision surgery for her and did a rehabilitation with an eye prosthesis. It's been 1 year now post-treatment. She's disease-free and living a good life. Next, please.
I think her consent was taken, Rohit, her consent was taken on a video consult with her parents from...
Yeah, she came alone from Nigeria for her treatment and the consent was taken through video conferencing through her parents. And this is how we treated her. So she was a quite bold child who came here and her only thing was, I will not go back unless you make my appearance good. So she's a young girl who wanted a good appearance. So this is how she had her eye prosthesis and she went back to Nigeria. Next, please. Another patient who have been treated 4 times, first time diagnosed in 2013, had a oral cancer, had a commando surgery with a flap, post of RT was given, then again in 2015 he recurred, second surgery was done, and 2019 again we did his final surgery. This time he had a 2 microvascular free flaps, a PMMC flap. His entire oral cavity is now with flaps only. He doesn't have a normal mucosa inside. All oral cavity is lined by different flaps. The only normal mucosa is the tongue, which is there. You can see in the picture. He's fine right now. It's been 1 year follow-up. He had just come and shown me, so I've just shown his picture. It's been 1 year. He's eating everything from mouth. He's got a taste also because the only mucosa that is on his tongue gives him the taste sensation. So he's eating well. He's speaking, his speech is still there, only some difference in his face, but it's been a 7-year survival for a patient who has failed radiation twice. 3 times he's been operated before, but right now he's disease free and living a good life. So these are some of the examples which I just wanted to show how salvage surgery is an option of treatment for these patients, those who have failed all other modalities of treatment. Thank you very much, everyone, for patient listening. Thank you, sir.
So, sir, we move on to the next presentation.
Yeah.
Dr. Chris, you have a comment? So, over to Dr. Anand, sir, for your presentation.
So today we have seen there's so many patients of head and neck cancer suffer recurrences. Some suffer recurrences after chemo radiation, some suffer recurrences after surgery. And what we need as a department is a multimodality treatment. No single modality can cure a substantial number of patients, and therefore the importance of tumor board, where surgeon, radiation oncologists, and medical oncologists have to sit together and find out what is best treatment for a particular patient. Because there may be sometimes there may be an option that surgery and radiation give equivalent results, but which one to offer? So it depends on patient's choice also, and it also depends what are the functional results. For example, in laryngeal cancer, what can give better voice, what can give better swallowing to a patient, that also decides whether we should do surgery or radiation or a chemo radiation. So I will show a few cases and then highlight some of the advances in radiation techniques, because over the last 10, 12, I would say 14 years, there has been a remarkable progress in the techniques which have reduced the morbidity of radiation. And therefore, as we go along and do the multimodality treatment, we often talk to surgeons and medical oncologists how to give equivalent or better results with much less morbidity. Next slide, please. So advances means the conventional radiation with cobalt machine is outdated. Now we should not offer this treatment because it has this, so many side effects of problem in swallowing, problem in dryness of mouth, problem in speech. So this is a, nowadays we offer radiation with linear accelerator with advanced radiation techniques like IMRT, which is more precise to the tumor, and we can spare, and I will show a few slides how we can spare normal structures while we are treating with high doses of radiation. Next slide, please. So this is the Novalis TX radiosurgery system we have at Max, which is a very pointed and pinpoint radiation done under the image guidance of a CT scan, which is there on the machine itself. So it is now a standard of care to offer image guided radiotherapy. And one such machine is there with us at Max, Saket. Next slide, please. So this is one slide which can be illustrative, and it can show you that in the conventional radiation means parallel opposed field, one field from this side, other field from this side, from both sides, and everything in between gets radiated to high doses. Whatever effort we make, we were unable to save the parotid glands, we were unable to save the submandibular glands, we were unable to save the pharyngeal muscles. But now with this IMRT, you can see we are able to spare submandibular gland. Blue means a low dose region, red and green means a high dose region. So we have saved the mandible, we have saved the submandibular gland, and also we have saved the spinal cord. So this way, if we spare the glands, the patient will have near normal saliva after completion of treatment. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is a rapid arc technique. Here again, I can show you that this is the parotid gland, which is outside of the high dose region. Red is the tumor, and we are treating the tumor with margin. We are treating the nodes of this side. We are treating the nodes of the contralateral side, sparing the spinal cord, and we are also sparing the parotid gland. And we make all effort to spare the submandibular gland, at least of the opposite side. because oftentimes in oral surgery, the ipsilateral submandibular gland is removed even during surgery. So if we can spare the opposite submandibular gland and we spare this parotid gland, we can give a good quality of saliva to this patient who can swallow well even after undergoing radiation or chemoradiation. Next slide. These are the constrictor muscles I was talking about. These are the muscles which we can spare during radiation. Constrictor, superior constrictor, middle and inferior constrictor muscles. The base of tongue in a laryngeal carcinoma will spare all these structures, so that there's no business of patient having laryngeal cancer, having dryness of mouth, and in the long term he says he cannot swallow. Nowadays, when we see our patients on follow-up, 70 to 80% of them have near normal saliva and near normal swallowing. You can interview them, you can ask them, and we have seen this transition in my own lifetime from last 30 years, where initially we were actually quite distressed with the difficulty in swallowing they used to have. Now, when we ask them, you can swallow, they say swallowing is near normal. Next slide, please. So this is our publication, which we published in 2008, where we showed favorable impact of intensity modulated radiation therapy on chronic dysphagia. What we are worried about is not the acute dysphagia during radiation therapy. What we are worried about is 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the line, how many patients have normal swallowing. So IMRT, as we call it in short form, is intensity modulated radiation therapy, has a lot of favorable impact on chronic dysphagia. And this we published in the British Journal of Radiology way back in 2008. And this is a very big advancement in radiation oncology in patients of head and neck cancers. Next slide, please. Not only that, we see these glands, we can also see tumor regression. Nowadays, we have a CT scan on the machine. You can see a big tumor here. And with passage of radiation, 10 to 20 radiation, you can see now the tumor is shrinking medially. And as the tumor is shrinking, we can save more and more organ. We can save more oral cavity. We can save more parotid gland. So this is a thing which was unthinkable about 10, 12 years back. Next slide, please. So one of the example I just want to share, and this is one patient, we are showing all unusual cases. Now, this is a patient who should have been operated. He had a non-healing ulcer on the right side of the tongue, came in just February of this year, 70-year-old male, biopsy positive, but you see the list of comorbidities. Many now people are surviving more and they have more comorbidities. He had coronary artery disease, hypertension, diabetes, chronic kidney disease. He was alcoholic. He was a reformed smoker. So you name it, he had 5, 6 morbidities, and he on top of that he had a big tumor, 5 into 2 centimeter right lateral border of tongue, going into floor of mouth and reaching up to midline. He had pacemaker also because of his cardiac condition. Next slide, please. So CT PET showed a big tumor, and it showed that the tumor was crossing the midline, was going and posteriorly and reaching up to base of tongue. So if the surgery had to be done, it would have been a very big surgery. And when we discussed in tumor board with this underlying medical conditions, the surgery was declined because surgery would have led to a lot of and even mortality during operation because of his medical condition. So he was inoperable due to his medical condition and somewhat also because the tumor was reaching the base of tongue. Next slide, please. Now this is the CT scan. First is the CT scan, and then there is the PET scan, and you can see a tumor which is occupying more than half of and going across the midline, and here in this section going into the floor of mouth. So this was a very big tumor from top to the bottom and up to the sublingual space here, extension into the sublingual space. Next slide, please. This is the pacemaker he had, and what is the important pacemaker is that if the pacemaker is very close to radiation, it can trouble radiation because both are electromagnetic radiation and there can be an interference. So we have to have a method of shielding the pacemaker. So what we do, we have a copper wire mesh work where we shield the pacemaker and give full dose of radiation as we did for this patient. Next slide, please. So this is the dose which we gave, and in spite of his condition, we gave a good high dose, 70 gray. By the way, he couldn't get even chemotherapy because of his medical condition, and therefore we had to escalate our radiation dose to about 70 gray. This is the tumoricidal dose in the absence of concurrent chemotherapy. So that is what we delivered, even if his age was 70. Next slide, please. So these are the doses. I don't know how these doses are missing. So we could spare the parotid gland, we could spare the submandibular gland, we could spare dysphagia-related structures, we could spare the pacemaker, we limited the dose to the lips. So we made all efforts that he receives full dose of radiation with minimum side effects. Next slide. He completed his full dose of radiation without many interruptions, fortunately, and he required a rise tube for about 3 weeks, which we removed towards the end of radiation. And then he was coming for follow-up, first follow-up at 2 months, and then 3 months, and now it is 6 months. And clinically, complete response is there. And MRI not possible to do. We have done a CT scan, which also shows a complete response, no evidence of disease. He has a good quality of life because we could spare his parotid glands, dysphagia-related structures, and he's swallowing well, and he has got a good speech. Next slide, please. So sharing some of the older pictures of long-term follow-ups. Combined modality is the key, as I have written here. Combined modality is the key. Now, this is a patient which we treated in 2004 with surgery and radiation therapy with IMRT. We followed him for about 6-7 years. This is an old slide. Followed him for 6-7 years. Continued to be in remission, complete remission. But what I wanted to emphasize, see his quality of oral cavity. The teeth are normal. Saliva, because of the good saliva, the mucosa is normal. His speech is good. His swallowing is good. Now that is what current radiation techniques are doing. That in spite of extensive and I would say multi-modality treatment, which is, I would say, a very intensive treatment, is not a small treatment. So they in spite of this intensive treatment, they have a good quality of life in the long term. This was a carcinoma tongue treated with surgery, followed by radiation therapy with IMRT. Next slide. Another sick gentleman, he had a carcinoma nasopharynx. So here the combined management was radiation and chemotherapy, because in nasopharynx, the treatment of choice is concurrent radiation and chemotherapy. And he was a sick gentleman, and he was very, very skeptical about losing his beard. So with the IMRT, we can even lower the dose to the skin. So I told him that maybe initially you may lose the hair, but cache, as they call, cache they call, because they are very sensitive. And so we said most of the hair will come back, and you can see most of the hair came back despite full doses of radiation to the nasopharynx and bilateral neck. And this was again a patient treated way back in 2003 when the IMRT had just arrived, and it was treated with IMRT and concurrent chemotherapy. I know him, he is from Ludhiana, my native town, and we follow, his brother is a doctor over there. So we are following him, he's disease free, and he now comes, he doesn't come now, he's passed more than about 13 or rather 17 years now. He just sends his email and says, thank you, doctor, I'm doing well. Next slide, please. This is a lady who had carcinoma base of tongue, and the base of tongue tumors are also treated with concurrent radiation and chemotherapy. This patient also was treated way back in 2003. This is a slide of 2005, and you can also see good control in base of tongue in oropharyngeal tumors. We achieve a 5-year survival of around 70 to 80%. Only 10-20% people can fail, and therefore quality of life, quality of saliva, quality of swallowing play a major role. According to us, this is one of the most important advances in radiation oncology, which we have seen in the last 15 years. Next slide, please. I think this one. So before I end, in spite of current technologies, we have to take utmost care of these patients. They all need oral prophylaxis before we start radiation. And many of the people here are from Kanpur, where the pan, tobacco, etc. is rampant. So therefore, they should have a good oral prophylaxis before start of the treatment. All caries need to be removed, good dental scaling, etc., etc. So if we do a good oral prophylaxis, post chemo radiation or post surgery and radiation, their oral health will be much better compared to if they have a bad oral prophylaxis, a bad oral hygiene, and on top of that, we give radiation. So teeth sensitivity is still a problem where we should train them to do fluoride toothpaste, and we have other methods of keeping the sensitivity as low as possible. Post-radiation dental caries, if somebody has done a good technology radiation, now dental caries is now much less. Only in patients who have recurrent cancers and we do re-radiation that we see now dental caries. In a typical case who receives concurrent chemo radiation or surgery and radiation, caries, incidence of caries has drastically reduced. Post-radiation dentures is a issue which we need to discuss with dental surgeons. And also nowadays we are seeing now patients demanding implants, that after the TEO, they want an implant to be inserted for their normal swallowing. Post-radiation osteoradionecrosis, fortunately, is very low now. We hardly see now. Previously, we used to see about 5 to 10% of patients developing osteoradionecrosis, which is down to about 2% or 3%. We hardly see osteoradionecrosis in our clinics nowadays. So with this, I come to the end of my talk, and the emphasis was on multimodality management with high technology radiation, high technology surgery, good reconstruction, so that we give surviving patient a good quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. I think we should take a few questions. Yeah. Dr. Garg, your comments, anything you want to say? Yeah.
Personally, I feel this was a very good presentation on behalf of Max Cancer Institute. All of you are doing very good work, and some of the works were really eye-openers for us, especially that girl with an eye tumor coming from Africa or Nigeria, from wherever she came, and she was handled. When she didn't have any attendance also, speaks very well of your institution, so that they could handle it just like glassware, you know. I mean, handling a girl of that age without attendance and giving her all that care was amazing, amazing. And the rest of the presentations, of course, were very good. I would invite all the people to unmute themselves and ask their questions directly. We have
There's one question by Dr. Atul Kumar, sir, in the chat box.
Okay.
Despite well-established therapies in immunotherapy, is there any role of high-dose vitamin C in cancer treatment? Your view on this? Dr. Devrat, you want to take this question?
I think it's a very interesting question, sir. Vitamin C at high doses is considered to be an antioxidant, and there has been a lot of interest in using high-dose vitamin C in what we call as integrative oncology, where we not only treat patients with active cancer treatment, but also nutraceuticals like this. So far, the results are still premature. We just have animal studies. There does seem to be some anti-cancer effect of vitamin C at higher doses, and the doses are nearly as high as 45 grams per infusion, along with sometimes multivitamin infusion and magnesium sulfate infusion. It may also potentially lead to a better quality of life. I think we are all waiting for some more data, some higher data, more robust studies in humans before we are able to apply this in practice. So hypothesis-wise, theoretically, looks promising, but needs some more research.
Thank you. I think I want to make one comment that the power of tumor burden, this is Dr. Anand's case, that he gave radiation where surgery was indicated because medically inoperable. These decisions are very difficult as a solo, if you're alone. But if you sit in a team, then you take a good decision. For this patient, this is the best approach. But the case which Rohit shared, that post-cricoid region failed, once opened, closed. दूसरी बार open करने जा रहे हो, then you have to be really sure, are you making sense of the whole thing, or giving radiation again for a very frail lady because tracheal cut margin was positive. So technology and teamwork, both these T's are very, very critical for taking difficult decisions. I think we have reached a certain level of collaboration where we can do all this with hand on the heart. That's what I always keep saying. It's like hand on the heart, because every decision has a challenge. So it's really very important.
I think, sir, the best part is how initially we used to fight. The surgeon and the radiation oncologist would fight, and gradually, as we saw each other's work, we
Even
learned.
medical oncologists, they were.
Yes, sir. And I think we've seen how how different modalities.
Now, as you grow older, you become more and more afraid, because by that time we have seen many more complications than a youngster has seen. So as we grow, we become more afraid, and therefore we try to take as many opinions, as many people together. Somebody may give a good, bright idea. So I think this is very important. That's why I showed multimodality. I cannot do alone anything.
Yeah.
Neither Harit or Rohit can do anything alone. Neither you. So we have to combine, and that is what we are doing.
May I say something now?
Yes,
May I
sir.
say
Can I ask a question if it is all right?
Yes, please. That is what we are here for. Yes,
Yeah.
so kindly.
So in your general workup, sir, what is your indication of doing a PET scan before you take up anybody for surgery? Everybody, or some relative indications for doing a PET scan?
Only three indications. One is a recurrent disease in head and neck cancer, where we always do a PET scan.
Okay.
Large nodal disease in neck, that's also an indication of PET scan. Or in fact, if you have an unusual presentation, large primary tumor, even then you consider PET scan. But upfront, operable oral cancer, tongue cancer, PET scan has no role.
Okay.
And one is, I think, a residual node. Suppose we have given chemo-RT and there is a residual node, and we don't know whether this residual node is viable or not, because sometimes even FNAC or biopsy may be negative. So if the residual node after chemo radiation or surgery radiation is persisting, and the PET scan may show that yes, there is a viable disease, and then you can do a PET-directed biopsy from there to document whether there is a residual disease or not, because then you can do an R&D and all that. So in a residual disease, also PET scan plays a good role.
Very, very important.
And one more thing, particularly in laryngeal cancers, when you have a CT-RT done, and when in the post-op, when a patient comes to you and he has a change of voice, difficulty in swallowing, and you've done an FOL for them, laryngoscopy, and you find that the mucosa is normal, but the patient is not good. So in those cases also you do a PET CT, and a PET CT shows uptake in the larynx, because what happens post CT-RT, it is very difficult to document recurrence of the disease. So in those cases, PET will help you that if there is a submucosal disease present inside, PET will show uptake inside the larynx, and you can even do an ultrasound guided FNAC from outside the neck, because inside you may see everything is normal. You may see edematous mucosa, and it is very difficult to document recurrence of disease by doing biopsies endoscopically. So again, PET has got a role in that.
Yeah, just another question to Dr. Rohit. How did you manage to get a consent for your patient the second time for surgery? Quite a task, Previously you were taken up for surgery and you had to close it up, and second time again getting a consent for such an operation.
See, patients don't have many options of treatment. That's very important.
दो चीजें हैं सर. एक तो I feel the trust which you build during the treatment. If they see objectivity, if they see intent, वो सबको patients को समझ में आता है सर. एक तो वो बहुत important है. If there is a relationship, then they easily agree. They कहते हैं, don't doubt, ठीक लगे आप करो. And that is one thing. Second thing is when a team talks, it's a different thing. जब उस मीटिंग में डॉक्टर आनंद भी बैठे हैं, देवव्रत भी बैठे हैं, रोहित भी बैठे हैं, और तब ये कह रहे हैं भाई देखो हम लोग ट्राई मारना चाहते हैं, बिकॉज ये सब करके यहाँ पहुंच गए, लग रहा है कि गुंजाइश है. So trust is a very critical factor in getting such consents. I agree, it's a very tough job.
I agree with Dr. Harit, because this trust which you build up with the patient enthuses positivity in the patient, and a positivity which definitely helps in curing cancer or controlling cancer. There is another comment I want to make. Ki, apart from that, we are medical practitioners, we are doctors, we tend to patients and we look after our patients and we give them health care and medical care. The compassion and the trust which we infuse in the patient is one of the sheath anchor of treatment. Especially so when you are treating cancers. I have had some odd experiences with the oncologist. I wouldn't name him, but I sent the wife of my friend, very close friend, to an oncologist who has been trained in US and all. And I said, you go to him. He's a very good oncologist and he will take very good care of you. Now, this lady comes back to me weeping कि सुभाष तुमने हमको किस जल्लाद के पास भेज दिया. मतलब these were the words of that lady, क्योंकि as soon as she sat in front of his desk and she showed her reports and the first words were, देखिए ठीक तो आपको होना नहीं है, मैं थोड़ा सा ट्रीटमेंट दूंगा, आपका कुछ कष्ट कम हो जाएगा, ठीक तो आप हो नहीं सकते. Now, this is the truth possibly, but the way it is conveyed to the patient is has to be more mature, more refined, and more sophisticated, rather than such a blunt statement to a person who already knows he has cancer, who already knows he is going to die, possibly die, and die a very torturous death. So I think this aspect of medical care, especially in cancer, is very important, which I find the way you people have been doing it is great. That should be there.
Can I make one comment on this thing? One is that in many institutions and in our earlier years also, we try to find solution within our own specialty. Suppose I am a radiation oncologist. If patient has problem, I will try to, even in recurrence, I will try whether re-radiation is possible, whether this is possible. The day you realize that you are alone, you can't do much, and the day you realize that somebody else can do better with you, then only we realize that how important it is, the multi-modality management. For example,
totally agree.
We should not be finding solution with our own specialty. Seek opinion from the other specialty. For example, from medical oncology, from surgical, surgeon should seek from radiation. Sometimes we see, oh, second time surgery is done. In our heart, we say, no, this should not have been the second surgery. It should have been the radiation. So I think that is why I presented multimodality, because alone, we can't, even if you do 30 years, 60 years in our lifetime, we can't achieve anything. Because
absolutely, I agree totally.
Into three, it becomes 90 years.
Absolutely.
Sir, can I ask another question?
Yeah, please.
This is wanted to ask Dr. Devdutt, what all moleculars are available now which you are using commonly, cetuximab or some others as well?
So, the successful anti-EGFR agent that has been often used is cetuximab, as you've rightly pointed out.
Extreme trial that you're talking about.
The extreme trial was the one that I showed one of the slides of, and we've used that, and I shared also our publication from Max, nearly 250 patients, and with amazing results which we published, and our own experience reflecting what the extreme trial showed. What has happened in the previous 2 years or 3 years, even in head and neck oncology, is that immunotherapy seems to be taking over. And while initially they came in the second line settings, and we had drugs like nivolumab, which is an anti-PD-L1, and so is another drug called pembrolizumab, both of which have been available in India for now nearly 3.5 years. The Keynote 048 trial, which was presented now nearly 1.5-2 years back, actually is pushing a combination of immunotherapy and chemotherapy to the first line setting. And for a very small select population of recurrent metastatic head and neck cancers who are not amenable to a salvage surgery or a salvage re-irradiation setting, even immunotherapy as a monotherapy for a certain subset of patients with a very high PD-L1 expression may be used. And we have one of the largest experiences with immunotherapy in general and also with immunotherapy in recurrent metastatic head and neck cancers. And we all discuss astounding results. I presented one case where this patient has had nearly 2 years where she was a platinum refractory progressing on CTRT, and she was supposedly should not have been alive any more than 6 months or a year, and is alive. So most of these drugs are available. I think we are trying to push immunotherapy into the earlier line setting, and we are looking at combining chemo and immunotherapy along with radical RT, and trying to see whether that adds to some enhancements in results and survival.
If I understand correctly, you are not only looking at an enhanced disease-free survival, but an enhanced overall survival as well.
Yeah, so there is evidence to suggest that immunotherapy has improved overall survival, not only in the second line setting. It's one of the first drugs to do that, and this was one of the initial trials that came in 2016, but also in the first line setting. And survival has improved from, on an average, 7 months in the just chemotherapy era to now 15 months in the chemoimmunotherapy era. I know we can probably improve it further, and I think that's where the focus is. How do you enhance it further, and who are the right patients to be receiving immunotherapy, and who are the patients who may not respond that well to immunotherapy and then should just be treated with chemotherapy with or without cetuximab.
So over to Dr. Garg. If he is agreeable, then I have one very small question to Dr. Rohit.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Rohit, choice of your flap in head and neck reconstruction, generally free flaps?
It depends upon the defect that the patient
Yeah,
has.
fine, fair enough.
The larger defects, definitely free flaps. And for the smaller defects, we can use the local flaps.
Right.
And secondly, about the patient's condition. For elderly patients, 80 years, 50 plus patients, we normally try to avoid free flaps in them, and we try to do some local flaps. But we have done free flaps in 90-year-old patients as well. So those, it depends upon the fitness of the patient, whether they can withstand such major surgeries or not. So the free flaps takes a little longer time. So it depends upon the fitness.
Somehow your voice is not coming. Voice is not coming out properly.
Dr. Rajan, yeah.
Sorry, it depends upon the fitness of the patient, basically. So yes, definitely for younger patients, it is free flaps. For elderly patients, 80 plus, we normally avoid doing free flaps because it's a long surgery. It depends upon the fitness and what they normally require. But yes, we have done free flaps in 90-year-old patients as well. So it is not that age is the criteria, but it is the general fitness of the patient and how they take it. So that's very important.
So just as an addendum, ALT or RAFA most of the times?
For maxillary defects, we normally use ALTs. For marginal mandibulectomies, the buccal mucosas, we normally prefer a RAFA.
Okay, thanks. Sir, I'm through.
Oh, good. I think if there are no more questions, I request Dr. Bijen Shukla to please thank the guests and the participants.
There's one more question in the chat box by Dr. Atul Kumar. Dear sir, how do you deal with cachexia of malignancy? This is very difficult. We have a good palliative support. Dr. Gaurav Channa is a palliative care specialist. So he takes care of these patients, but their options are very minimal. And Megace and all these traditional medicines is what we use, but not much value. Yeah. But we have a palliative care.
Can I just add to his question? In malignant cachexia, it depends when the cachexia is setting in. Whether this cachexia patient has presented with the diagnosis made and patient has come with cachexia at the time of diagnosis, their cachexia responds very well to the anti-cancer treatment, and cachexia improves. You can put a PEG tube, you can put a RICE tube, and that. But the bigger problem is if the cachexia is with the recurrent tumor. Now there, even if you treat the malignancy, cachexia may not improve that well. For that, we have some drugs also, megestrol acetate, some NSAIDs. So I think we have seen megestrol acetate doing a good job. And many times we have seen patients very much underweight, and we put them on 80 BD or 160 BD, some higher doses of megestrol acetate. It helps in producing well-being, weight gain, appetite improves. And many times we have seen, when we have seen, okay, patient is not suitable for any treatment, after some weight gain and all, they sometimes become suitable for some kind of treatment as well. So there are some anti-cataxic agents available. Sometimes steroids are also used for this purpose.
Dr. Devrat, what do you say now?
Sir, I agree with Dr. Anand and Dr. Harit's opinion.
Okay. Do we call it a day now? Do we call it a day now?
Yeah.
Good night and goodbye.
Dr. Begin, आप thank you करेंगे?
It's my real pleasure to give thanks to all my legends and especially the Max team for organizing such a wonderful and useful presentation, especially respected Haris sir, Devrat sir. Thanks to you, Dr. Anil Anand and Dr. Rohit, and to all my participants attending this conference. Just heartiest thanks to all of you. सर एक मैं एडिशन करना चाहता हूँ अपनी तरफ से कि सर जैसे आपके ट्यूमर बोर्ड में हर तरह के स्पेशलिस्ट हैं, क्या सर उसमें कुछ एक स्पिरिचुअलिज्म के लिए भी जगह है कि जो एक फिजिकल वेलबींग के साथ साथ एक साइकोलॉजिकल, मेंटल एंड स्पिरिचुअल वेलबींग के लिए भी ऐसा कुछ होना चाहिए जो मेंटल सपोर्ट के लिए, साइकोलॉजिकल सपोर्ट के लिए?
सपोर्टिव क्या कहते हैं, पेशेंट सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम. हमारे पास क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट हैं, पार्ट ऑफ द टीम. सो जो पेशेंट्स का सपोर्ट ग्रुप चलता है, उनके वर्कशॉप्स होते रहते हैं, उनका क्या कहते हैं, ड्राइंग थेरेपी हो रही है, डांस थेरेपी हो रही है, कभी कभी टॉक्स हो रही हैं. It's an ongoing thing. A lot of things go on, and as I said, spiritual talk. So we believe in a holistic care, and we want to do that as much as we can. So from prevention to palliation, पूरा spectrum हम लोग cover करने की पूरी कोशिश करते हैं.
Nice sir, very great, so nice of you. Thank you sir, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thanks to all of you.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Harit, continue taking care of Kanpur people.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
It's very good to see the love and affection for Kanpurites.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.